Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football and preview the last regular season game of the season as the Seahawks visit the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals come into the game 4-12, but come off a really nice victory against the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. Kyler Murray had 3 touchdowns, and Connor had well over 100 yards rushing. The time of possession in that game was almost 2-1, and they just kind of blew them out. Seattle, conversely, comes off a really poorly played game and loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. Their playoff chances hang by a thread, no longer depending on us to just win out. We also need the Chicago Bears to win in Lambeau Field against the Packers Sunday game times, I think at the same time, in order for us to have a chance. And then we've got to take care of business in the desert. So welcome in, Keith. Lots to talk about here.
Yeah, lots to talk about here. Arizona came into this year as one of the least talented teams, one that, we were just expecting to not do well, and they, for the most part, haven't done well. They're not a very good team. But is anybody confident that Seattle's going to win this game?
Honestly, the Cardinals have been playing with a lot of heart. They just don't have a very talented team, but they've got talent in the right spots. And then Kyler Murray's been playing well. That story is actually really good. Both of us, particularly me, I think, have been fairly hard on Kyler Murray over the last couple seasons as we've talked more about leadership roles and so forth. We've never questioned his leg talent. Sometimes can be a very good passer in the right situations, but has kind of fallen short, I think, in the maturity level aspect of his game, and had an ACL towards the end of the last season, came back about 5 games ago, and just has really been playing well. I think coming back from an injury like that as quickly as he did showed that his commitment to the game and to the team and to this new coaching staff led by Jonathan Gannon, and that really kind of impressed me. I think the team rallied around him, and he kind of stepped up. So while they've got a lot of holes in their game, they have a lot of heart. And sometimes in the NFL, that's what it takes. And we didn't see that from Seattle last game. That's why I think you're sensing that. Does anybody believe that we actually have this game in hand? That it's because of that. Now you're starting to question if Seattle is going to show up.
Significantly more talented team. Seattle's a significantly more talented team. Does it matter?
It may not matter in the end. Seattle win or lose this game may not have a chance to get into the playoffs and go anywhere anyway.
Well, I mean, in terms of just winning this game.
I think it matters, Keith, in a sense that you've already got a fairly bad taste in your mouth about A, the season in general, and B, the last few weeks in the way that they've played, losing or winning a close game against Tennessee, and the way that they've played these games. And you can talk about strategy or game plan or scheme. And then, now their ability to show up and desire to play physical, to desire to show up and really give it everything they've got is now in question. The literally the heart and soul of this team is being questioned. Now, when that happens, one of two things happens in the offseason. Your entire coaching staff gets jettisoned, and the players deemed responsible for causing some of that disruption during the season are gone. And so if they don't win this game, and if they show the way that they showed against Pittsburgh, I would almost predict that the entire thing gets blown up. That's how important I think this game is. You said, does it
I
really
think
matter? I think it really does matter, actually.
No, it really does matter in the long. I would agree with you that it matters in the grand scheme of things. But I mean, in terms of the Seahawks being by far the more talented team, does it matter in this game? Does being more talented matter in terms of whether or not we are going to think that Seattle's going to win?
It should. It should matter.
But does it?
In the end, yeah. I mean, I was going to kind of get to this towards the end of our show, but I'll get to it right now. It's like, yeah, I think in the end, it was funny. Pete kind of gave a press conference with mixed results out of that conference. There were a few things he talked about that I disagree with, but one of the things I did agree with was he said, people are kind of counting this out, and can you correct what's wrong in 1 week? And he said, you just watch. He was very stern, very, very serious about it. You watch. We've been doing some things. We're going to have some changes, and we're going to go out and play. So things have been said. I'm sure players have been yelled at, all sorts of stuff in the background. We have no idea really what has gone on, but I can guarantee that it's not been pleasant this week at the practice facility. And I think that they're going to come out and play with a lot of emotion. And then in the end, based on the fact that I think they're going to come out ready to play, talent wins. And so, yes, to answer your question, I believe talent does have a role in this game, and eventually will come out on top. For me, we'll see. Could be completely wrong. I mean, the team's kind of in rough shape. Let's be honest. Mentally, talented team, mentally not there as far as a team that maximizes its talent and is ready to go into the playoffs. Should they get there? Should they get into the playoffs, Keith? Does anybody expect them to do anything at all except for 1 and out? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, nobody expects them to do much. And I think that's fair, given how they've played at times this year, especially against teams that are physical, teams that can run the football. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Arizona's one of the top running teams in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. So that was one of the things that really disappointed me out of Pete Carroll's the Brock and Salt weekly interview that he does after the game. He was pretty darn casual in that interview. This is the morning after, and they talked about running against them and the mindset, and he admitted their game plan was faulty, incorrect. They planned more for limiting explosive plays rather than stopping the run. He said that was the cause of a mindset that was not ready and equipped to be physical, and pointed to that as being an issue. The problem I have with that is twofold. One, that's not the first time that we've heard Pete Carroll talk about the team not being ready to play in a game, and including the first game of the season, which points to coaching more than players, I believe. Maybe not, but because I'm not inside the room, but to me, that's
but you also have to take into account the Seahawks have allowed more opening possession touchdowns on defense than any team in the NFL.
7, right? In
8
7 games, they've okay
8 now, because they did against Pittsburgh as well. In 8 games, teams have had their first possession, gone the length of the field, and scored a touchdown.
In 16 games, that's half. That's
half.
Yeah.
That means that the defensive scheme, as it's set up for that particular game, the game plan, has not been set up to stop what the opposing team does in at least 8 games. They have not designed a defense that stops what the other team's going to do.
At least on our first drive, scripted drive. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know
I
what the
mean,
other
these
team's
are
gonna
big
do on their
issues, Keith.
opening
These are
drive.
big, like large issues that transcend one game or one series or whatever. These are, these are challenging to the core of what are the Seattle Seahawks. So this, to me, this is as close as I think Pete Carroll's been on a hot seat as you can be, while still having, I mean, everyone respects what he's done, but it's getting to the point
I don't think he's
where,
on a hot seat. Unless he puts himself on a hot seat, he's not on a hot seat.
I think he is. And the reason that I say that is that, and we just don't know what's going on with Jody Allen, Burt Colt, all those players on the ownership side. But I think expectations were higher this year clearly higher than where we've performed. And so that's why I think it's kind of, and Pete's 72 and he's apparently lost a portion of the locker room, maybe not on the offensive side of the ball, but clearly on the defensive side. And it's hard to identify players, but Reek Wollen's probably a guy that's, his mind is not on the football field. You can see him, like that one play where Bobby Wagner stood in there to make the tackle at the line of scrimmage, and then the whole line of scrimmage moved 5 yards into the end zone, and Reek Wollen was just standing there the whole time, right on the edge of the play. Other players kind of came in, but he was the guy that was just kind of watching the play unfold as it happened and didn't do a thing, didn't move, which was crazy. And Diggs on the back end, I mentioned him laughing at that play that Wollen got stiff armed. That's not the reaction that I would expect a leader on the team to have in a situation like that. That told me that his head was gone. Like he was not there, ready to be the enforcer on the back end of that defense.
Yeah, you either have to pick your guy up or you have to go be mad at him.
Yeah.
Like you can't just laugh.
Yeah.
Like that's not that especially a guy making what he's making and has played as poorly as he has this year. Like, no.
That's why I think I came into the last show and said, it's clear to me that Clint Hurtt's gone. That was the moment for me. And now there's been other moments and it's probably not the moment, but it was the most recent moment where I thought, okay, that's it. It's over, because once you've lost players like that, it's gone. It's over. And I don't know if it's limited to a certain core or if it's the entire thing. And if it's the entire thing, Pete's gone, because you can't lose an entire team, an entire locker. I think there are elements where he's lost his ability to motivate, whether it's motivating his own coaches or communicating a certain style that he wants or a game plan that he wants to implement and have those guys translate that to the players. Somewhere in there, it's gone. And I don't know where that responsibility lies, but ultimately it does rely with the head coach. That's why I think that he might be on the hot seat a little bit.
Yeah, I guess
I'm not a full blown like Pete needs to go guy. Like, there's a few other bloggers
90%
out there
of Seahawks Twitter.
Yeah, doing that. And it's disheartening to see, because I think it's short-sighted a little bit, because you and I have been around the game for a long time, been around this team and seen the way it works and so forth. And I don't know that he's necessarily the problem, but there is a big problem on this team, and he needs to figure it out quick in the off season, because they've got about a week and a half of time between the last game, if they don't make the playoffs, and when decisions are going to need to be made on coaching staffs and stuff. So it'll be interesting. So let's get back to this thing just a little bit. Arizona's been playing well. Yeah, there's reason to be a little worried about this game. If we were in it and we were going to be, playoffs are on the line and stuff, I would definitely be worried. I'm almost not even worried anymore. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. The season to me seems to be somewhat over. Even if we did make the playoffs, I just don't have confidence that they would do anything. So for me, I'm just kind of riding this thing out and almost thinking about off-season stuff already.
Yeah.
But this thing needs to be played. And
my brain is transitioned in off-season mode.
Yeah.
And I mean, is there a chance? Yes, they have to beat Arizona, which they should do. I'm not confident they will, but they should do. But then they need the Bears. Yes, the Bears to beat Green Bay.
And does Green Bay still have to win to get in? Or are they?
No, I don't believe they. Well, let me look at that again.
Let's look at that.
Because
I think that, Arizona comes in just with nothing to lose, which is a dangerous team to begin with. And then they're playing well. James Conner had a great game against the Eagles run defense, which is pretty decent. And then Kyler Murray was throwing the ball all over the place. He's fully recovered from the knee, and they're just playing loose and free, and good for them. But they do have an inferior roster. I mean, we should be kicking their ass, really. Mm-hmm. And we may, in fact, come in with a chip on our shoulder, and they want to prove that they aren't the team that just got their asses handed to them by Pittsburgh. If that team shows up, we could roll. I mean, Seattle's a formidable team. I mean, I think they're still ranked 10th or 11th or 12th in offensive EPA and all that kind of stuff. Defense, they're horrendous. I don't know if that can be improved. If they have any pride, maybe they become middling as far as the defense. But they certainly aren't top 10, even if they were to play really, really, really good. I don't know, Keith. I don't know. You talked about injuries before we hit the record button. Let's talk about those just for a minute and see if those are going to impact this game at all.
Yeah. So, Ken Walker, you had, and I talked a little bit about, what had happened with him and why the team went away from the run. Well, he apparently, aggravated his shoulder injury and was unavailable. So there's that.
Pete did say that he practiced this week and looked pretty good, felt better at this time of the week than he did last week. So he said that remains hopeful. Not so good news with Abe Lucas, though.
Yeah.
So Abe Lucas re-aggravated his knee on the last play of the first half in the Pittsburgh game, and Pete said it's just really uncomfortable for him. He can't press. He can't push off on it or create any stress or get any power out of it. And so they probably end up shutting him down. At least I would, and try to figure out what's going on so he can be ready for training camp in 2024. And if he needs off-season surgery, you got to do it. But if he's going to be chronic and they don't elect to do surgery and then he re-aggravates it, that's going to be an issue too. So not sure what's going on there, but something needs to happen. And it's disappointing because he's our best offensive lineman when healthy. And it looks like, and Jason Peters has got an ankle or something. He's not going to be ready to go. And so it's going to be Forsythe again. And we saw what happened with Forsythe against TJ Watt.
Forsythe is a backup. I mean, he's not a bad backup, but he's still a backup. He's not starter material. And you could do far worse as a backup, but he
going against one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He was kind of exposed, but anybody would be, really. Everybody's
exposed in that situation. So I'm not that worried about it. You asked earlier about it. Can Green Bay, does Green Bay have to win to get in? They can lose and still be as high as the 7 seed with help. And they could fall all the way out if they lose. So it depends on how how the other games go. So they don't have to win, but if they don't win, it's harder for them to make the playoffs.
So they're going to show up and play.
Yeah. And they're playing against a bad team.
And they're going to be playing at home. Oh, joy.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are. We've had a good year. 2023 was a good year for us, Keith. I mean, we recorded tons of shows. We had a great time. We had fun and interesting conversations throughout. I think that the hopes were high for this team leading all the way back to free agency, and the way that they came into the draft with a couple high draft picks and 8 picks total before any trades, and they seemingly did pretty well in the draft, and they had their second year players coming back, and it started with the injury to Lucas we just talked about, and I think that caused some offensive disruption, probably more so than we even realized, because Lucas has been really good since he came back. I think it just showed kind of what we've been missing, and then on the defensive side, it just never came together. They played well for a while, but against inferior opponents, the defense was overinflated as far as their run defense. I think early on teams were trying to throw the ball against them as opposed to run on them, and since week 11 we've been the worst run defense in the NFL, and it hasn't even been close. It's just been awful. And then we've ranked dead last in time of possession on the defensive side, 28th in drives resulting in points, 29th in points per drive. And a whole bunch of other rankings were either 28th or worse as far as just overall defense, and it's just so disappointing based on the idea that of who we brought in free agency, what we did in the draft. It just seemed like everything was improving, and boy, it did not. It did not. So things are going to have to give in the off season for sure. But in this game, I just want them to come out with some heart, with some passion. I'm going to be going to this game, taking my son Logan to this thing, and bought some good seats. I don't know, last August, maybe July, sitting right on the 40-yard line, about 20 rows up, something like that. So it's going to be a fun game to watch. And I want them, selfishly to go and show up and perform well, and show some heart, so that I can go into the off season with some hope, because the last thing that I want to do is to see it like a Pittsburgh performance out of this game and walk away really with no hope, nothing to hang my hat on, nothing on the defensive side at all that I would want to bring back. You almost just kind of blow it completely up, which is, there's probably, a decent handful of players you'd want to have back, but there's also a bunch
of guys that I would want to have back on defense, but you do need to blow it up. Your two most expensive defensive players both have to go, and that would be Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs. And that alone would be a big shakeup. I think that they need to look at middle linebacker and look at an upgrade there. And I know it's Bobby Wagner and we love him, but his lack of speed and just his declining athleticism has gotten to a point where I think he still has a place, but it needs to be as the second middle linebacker, the one in the, Devin Bush role where you're playing 60% of the snaps, not as the, guy in the middle that lives there.
Pete said he wanted him back this next year. Wagner came out and said 100% I want to play next year, and 100% I want to be back on this team. And we'll just see what happens contract wise. They'd have
Pete
to sign
said
him
that
again.
when they brought him in, it was not to be an every down player. That it was to be,
and he would play, I think, better. I think he would be better in general if he had a really good player next to him all the time. And that's Brooks. Brooks is a good player. I think that's good enough. But you need to be able to surround him with better players. I was thinking about this today a little bit as far as what is this team missing? And this team essentially is missing Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor. You've got, as much as you like Diggs, not you, Keith, in general, but just in general, as much as you would like Diggs, he's not Earl Thomas. He doesn't. I think that's one of the schematic things that Pete is having issues with, is that he wants to run the same defense he's had in his brain for a long, long time, but he doesn't have the personnel to do it, and nor scheme tweaks or defensive-minded coaches that can put it all together. And without a talent like Earl Thomas, a true one high, deep safety that can literally cover a third of the field, that defense becomes really hard to do. And then an enforcer, a guy that's going to give your team the attitude, the gravitas, the everything, the nuts and bolts and heart of your defense, as far as physicality is concerned. And a guy like Cam Chancellor we're missing that. We don't have that.
See, I think they're missing Cam Chancellor more than that, because Cam Chancellor was the captain of the defense. When there was a problem and Sherman was yelling at people on the sidelines, it was Cam Chancellor who came over and yelled him down. When people weren't doing their jobs and people were making mistakes, it was Chancellor that got in their face and, held him accountable. And they don't have anybody who's doing
Bobby's
that
always
right now.
been somewhat soft-spoken, in the locker room as a leader. He's a leader. People respect him, but he's not an enforcer on the defense.
Yeah.
He's right.
They are missing that guy. And they need that. They thought that they were getting that when they traded picks and everything for Jamal Adams. They thought they were getting, Cam Chancellor, a guy who hits hard, plays physical, emotional leader, all that kind of stuff. And instead, they've gotten a guy who's always hurt, never there. You can't depend on him, and nobody takes him seriously because he's not a guy you can depend on. And it's been a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what, I was just thinking, if Pete really wants to schematically be right, like have people do their jobs, do their assignments, stay true to their, football, he needs to have the personnel that matches up to that. And he's missing key components all along the way, instead of drafting Creed Humphrey at center. They drafted a gadget wide receiver in D. Eskridge.
Yeah, that was a mistake from the moment that draft went down.
I respect Witherspoon. I do a lot on the back end. I love him as a player. I'm glad he's on our team, but Jalen Carter's there, and you need that defensive tackle as the heart of your defense. I kind of missed that pick a little bit.
Yeah, I'm still not. I would have loved that pick, and I would have that would have made the defense.
Not even Jalen Carter, somebody else. Just somebody else.
But there wasn't anybody else.
But okay, so they went out
in last year's draft. If you want the monster defensive tackle, who's going to dominate games and do that, your options were Jalen Carter and all of his baggage, or nothing.
Yeah,
that was it.
Right.
But
what I'm saying is constructing a team, the way that the team is constructed is just not conducive to the way that I think Pete wants to play football. That's all I'm saying. It just hasn't worked out that way. Like the two high safety, we've never replaced Earl Thomas, really.
You're
Diggs
never going
is a fine player, but he doesn't have the speed to.
You're not going to replace Earl Thomas. If that's what you're hoping to do, then you're setting yourself up to fail. Nobody's got that speed. Nobody's got the ability to do the things that he did. He was one of a kind.
Yes, but there are other players that. Okay, so yeah, so the off season is going to be fascinating for me because there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. Obviously, if you can jettison some salary, you've got opportunities to replace. And then the draft, unfortunately, we gave away a second round pick. You've got to be able to sign Williams again if that trade is going to work out long term. And he's not going to be cheap. But he's also one of the best players we have on defense. I think you get a full season of him and Uchenna Nwasu and a couple other guys, Boye Mafe. I think the defense can be solid. But you're right that the middle of the defense needs a complete revamp, I think. Maybe Jordan Brooks isn't back. Bobby Wagner, both of our safeties. I think we've got some great pieces on the back end. Woolen's going to need some work. I don't know exactly what has broken him, but he needs to be fixed and come back as he was as a rookie. And you pair that with Witherspoon and either Trey Brown or another guy. I think they're fine at corner as long as they can get another guy. But the safeties and the linebacker group need to be completely redone. And there needs to be some sort of leadership on that team, and I don't know where it's going to come from. It probably doesn't even exist on the team right now on defense.
Yeah.
And it's going to have to start with the coach. It's going to have to start with a new DC who's going to have to bring in his own guys and his, and find an enforcer, find a guy that's going to give you the heart and soul of your new revamped defense.
I mean, that's really what this team is missing. Is they're missing that guy. They're missing the true leader. They're missing their Cam Chancellor. I mean, Earl was the more talented safety, and Bobby Wagner was the better player, even at his own position, and both of those guys, although Earl's career ended in a weird way, so it may take him a hot second to get into the Hall of Fame. Both of those guys are early ballot Hall of Famers. Bobby's a easy first ballot guy, but I think you get into like that defense, and it still doesn't work without Cam and the leadership and what he brought as far as that. And it helped that he was really good and people respected him, but it's also just his personality. So,
yeah. And they had Bennett and Cliff Averill and, a rotation of defensive tackles in there over the years that, yeah. And of course, our corners. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we'll have to figure some stuff out on the offensive side, obviously with Geno Smith, et cetera. But yeah, this whole defense is going to have to be redone. There are enough pieces there where, you've got 2/3 of it, but a third of that defense is going to have to be redone and new coaching staff and whatnot. I'm not sure how far that extends. Is it an entire regime change, which is a big can of worms, but we'll see. So, okay. So let's get down to the end of this game. What do you expect and what do you want to see?
What do I want to see is for this team to come out and just dominate. They have the talent to do it. Go do it. Go put it together. Go run over Arizona, which is not a good run defense. Go stop the run and make a fairly mediocre pass defense or pass offense beat you, which they're not going to do. Get after Kyler Murray. Just dominate. Go do the things you're supposed to do as the better team. What do I expect to see? Honestly, I expect to be frustrated. I expect the team to do enough to remind everyone that they're the more talented team, and shoot themselves in the foot enough to let Arizona hang in it. And God, that's frustrating. But that's what I expect.
Yeah, it could be one of those games. It could be you let them hang around and you go try to win it in the fourth quarter, and you do, and you come home and you just
Why are you? Why are you winning that way against bad teams? Like they did that against Washington. Washington's terrible.
In Tennessee.
Yeah. I mean, Washington's going to have the second overall pick in the draft. That's where they currently stand.
And it's always been that. It's been that way. I mean, there are occasions where we get out and rip the ball and really, really light it up. But how many times did that happen in the last 4 or 5 years? Like 3, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I certainly don't expect them to put 40 points up and have Arizona just have 7. This is going to be more like a 30 to 24 game or 21. I do expect Seattle to come out and win. I do. What's that, Keith?
I said that Arizona is not talented enough for Seattle to be giving up 24 points. That's not saying they won't, because they haven't played to their talent level on defense all year.
It really does depend on who shows up on defense. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, God, it's just so frustrating. I'm going to pick a Seattle win, but I'm expecting this game to be, let's say 26-23. The defense gives up way more than they have any business giving up, and the offense does just enough to beat a bad team.
I'll go out on a limb here, and I'll say that we win this game at least 28-13. And for whatever reason, a defense that we haven't seen for a while shows up. We're able to shut down the run. We get a couple of sacks on Murray, a couple turnovers, and we just kind of take care of business and get it done and walk off the field 9-8 and probably not in the playoffs. And it's going to be looked at as a step back for this team, and changes will be coming. But I think in this game, there's a lot of pride. I mean, there really is. These guys are prideful. They're not trying to lose. They're not trying to, be bad. They just are. And so, but I think it all kind of comes together for them in this game. I think this is a good matchup for them, to be completely honest.
Well,
I think we match up well across the board, and we just take care of business.
I'm feeling too cynical at the moment to agree with you.
Right?
I mean,
it's hard. It's hard.
The talent is there. The talent is there for them to just wipe the floor with Arizona. It is. Seattle is the better team. I mean, look what happened in the first outing. Just clobbered them. But the way the Seahawks are playing right now, especially defensively, I just don't know. I just don't know what we can realistically expect out of this team. I just don't expect them to show up and do the thing they should do, which is dominate a bad team.
Well, it's been a great run, Keith. We could be back our very next show, not only doing a recap, but also a look forward into the future and our off season together, which will be our 8th. Crazy. And the run up to the draft in May.
Yep. I already started working on some draft stuff. This last game had me
I did the same thing.
It had me I was so down about this team after the Pittsburgh game. I'm like, forget it. I'm in off-season mode. And I started looking at
I was going to ask you if you had done a mock draft yet.
I have not done a mock draft. I started looking at quarterbacks and trying to see quarterbacks are probably going 1-2. And I started trying to get a feel for where Penix and Nix and any of the other guys might go. Because Seattle currently has the 15th pick. So right dead in the middle of the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Probably are going to have to move up to get a quarterback.
Yeah, that lack of a second rounder's a pain in the ass in this draft. But we also have, currently, we have 75 and 77.
Mm-hmm.
Denver's, is it Denver's pick? I think it might be Denver's pick. And
they have
and
an
our
extra
pick
third
in the third.
Yep, they have an extra third round pick, so they can use that. But honestly, like, I mean, I guess they could use those, or they could reach into the following year, and use a second round pick from there to help them move up.
Yeah,
but I think they're going to have to.
I would be in favor of doing whatever they need to do or feel like they need to do, depending on what Geno happens with Geno. Obviously, Geno's not going to be your long-term franchise quarterback for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe that he could still be a bridge for you. He's under contract next year. I don't like the number. Somehow, if that's reworked, I'm fine with that. If it's left alone and he comes back on $30-some-odd million, that's going to be an iffy proposition for me.
Here's the problem that you run into is that Chicago may go quarterback because Fields is on the last year of his rookie deal, and so they may just reset that. Washington needs a quarterback. New England needs a quarterback. Arizona might. The Giants might. The Chargers don't. Tennessee doesn't. The Jets do. Atlanta does, whether they want to admit it or not. Chicago again. Right? Vegas needs a quarterback. All of these teams picked before Seattle. That's not where you want to be. They're going to have to not just move up. Hey, move up from 15 to 10 or 11 and, get the whoever hasn't been taken of the Knicks Penix pairing. That's going to be the second tier. You're going to have to get up to like 5 if you want a
So you think
quarterback.
Drake May and Caleb Williams and
I think
Jaden
those two go 1-2.
Daniels and beyond Daniels, who else is there? And I've seen some mocks recently where he's in Seattle's range. Jaden Daniels, if you like him.
Yeah, he is not. To me, I'm in the really early stages, but I've got him as QB5 in this draft.
Yeah. I mean, but you take a look at Bo Nix, he's 24, be 25 in his rookie season. You take a look at Penix, he'll be 25 in his rookie season, plus 2 ACLs in his younger self. That's going to push those guys down.
It will. And they're both superior players to Daniels.
I agree. And I think both those guys are going to be, what I'm saying is both those guys are going to be available to Seattle at 15 or a small trade back, I believe. I don't believe they're going to be available in the second round. It wouldn't have mattered anyway, I don't think. But
I just look at all those teams above them. And if you are New England or Chicago or Vegas, they don't even have a quarterback. Okay, it might be a little early to take Penix, but you wouldn't take him at 11 if you're Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to go get the guy that you want. Drake May, some boards is a little above Williams. Williams had a couple of games where he struggled this year. It's interesting. I mean, a lot of guys need tackles and all that stuff too. So, and it seems like a lot of teams work out the quarterback situation ahead of the draft, at least a placeholder guy. So, take some of the pressure off selecting if the draft doesn't fall their way. It's just, it'll be interesting. I mean, we'll have to really get into it, Keith. I mean, when you start talking about just kind of getting into the draft, it's an interesting proposition. And I think we do kind of start with the quarterback spot. It just naturally. And I think it's a good class with some talent that's going to be there later on. If Seattle either trades back or figures out a way to move up into the early second part of the second round, guys like Bo Nix, currently on, big boards hovering anywhere from 50 to 60. I think he moves up a little bit off of those.
Oh, I think he moves up a lot.
But I think that he's still kind of your third or fourth guy because of his age. But he's a winner. He's a winner. He takes care of the ball. I watched him in person at Arizona State this year, and the guy was phenomenal in that game. And
usually he's
that.
a winner means, he doesn't have a lot of skills, but the team wins games when he's playing. That's typically how when it's used for quarterbacks.
Well, I didn't
but
mean it that way.
He's a guy that he does all the things. He gets through a progression quickly. He gets the ball out quickly. He's really, really accurate. He throws really well in the run.
Do you have Penix higher or Nix?
I have Penix higher.
Just in that last game alone. I mean,
his deep
that
ball
last
and his
game was
ability
remarkable.
to strike downfield and make big plays happen. And he's just got a monster arm. So I have Penix higher at the moment. It's still really early though.
And he can get the ball out so quick, and his motion is just so tight. But he's got the 2 ACLs, which limits his mobility. And you combine that with his age, and it's tough. It's tough to value. It's tough to have a valuation on a player like that. Do you take him early and regret it, or do you take him later and get good value?
They're going to look at the medicals, and they're going to do all of that.
Who was that player from Tennessee last year we had the same issue with? The quarterback
from Tennessee.
Can't remember.
Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
But Hooker also got injured in a bowl game. So you knew he was going to miss the first year.
But he's an older prospect to begin with.
Yeah. And that's why he fell.
Third round?
But he was also not going to be available as a rookie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, fun. Yeah, fun. So who do you like in the championship game?
From what I saw in the semifinals, I want to say Michigan. I just don't think Washington has the defense to win that game. But honestly, I wouldn't put it past Penix to just light up the scoreboard and put up 45 and win 45-41. Like that Washington offense.
I think it will be a good
legit.
game like that. I think it will be a high scoring game. I think
Washington's
both defenses
offense is
can't
legit.
stop each other. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, fun. I want Washington to win for obvious reasons. Okay, so let's get out of here. We both predicted this thing as a win, and just kind of limping out of this thing. I don't see Chicago beating the Packers, but anything can happen. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, been enjoyable, Keith. Thank you so much, and we'll talk probably Monday. Since I'm going to be at the game, I'm probably not going to be available right afterwards. So we'll get together next week, Monday, and discuss the results and where we go from there. So you can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. You can find the show Seahawks Playbook Podcast on your favorite podcast platforms and YouTube, and hit that subscribe button, please, and share it as well. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.